Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a lovely reading here to begin with a video, so enjoy.
Russians. I stared at the old man in the U.S. Navy Dixie felt hat. I waited for him to add more, but he didn't.
That sounded like the Bad Nightmare version. I'm unable to hear anything. I don't know if that's the case with everyone else.
But I can hear you, John.
Morning, Cassidy.
Hi.
Good to see
Hi,
you.
Jessica. You might want to start it over again. I don't think we're getting any audio, I think is the problem.
I'm getting a weird echo thing happening.
Yeah.
That's John's Hunter S. Thompson version, I think, that he did.
That's just the acid. It's okay. Let it sink in. Ride the wave.
The acid normally cures the sound for me.
Well, I might disappear here for just a moment and come back, and hopefully that will help us here.
Okay, we can talk among ourselves. We're good at talking among ourselves. Like it's,
Where are you, Cassidy?
I'm in my house in Santa Fe.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And John, you're in your house in California.
I'm in my house in California.
You cross Wyoming, population 25. So
It doesn't have the same weather pattern.
Bishop, I miss you.
I miss you too. I'm happy to see you.
Yeah, ditto.
I watched his show the other night. We screened a couple of the episodes.
Of what?
The Righteous.
Oh, of that show. Oh, I thought you said a show. I was like, what show?
No.
Did you like it?
Yeah, it's great. It's really funny. It's really, really funny.
Yeah, it's a little dark. A lot of full frontal male nudity, but other than that.
I blocked my eyes. Covering my eyes. Nobody.
Yeah. I just like that he's evening the scales, to be honest.
All right, let's give this a shot and see if it'll.
He's all right.
Can you hear it now?
Let's see. I'm not hearing anything yet.
No, I'm not hearing anything either.
Who did the video of these pieces for you, Craig?
This was Marcus Red Thunder, like that. He came down like that because we thought, well, we got these wonderful readings like that, and we thought they can either look at a blank screen or
I just think they're great. I thought A. Martinez's reading the other day was so interesting with the imagery that
It was fun. It was really, really fun to do them. Like Cassidy's was magnificent. Oh my goodness! Look at
thank you.
And that was actually Marcus's daughter
all around us. Why,
really?
right
Oh,
here
there we go. There it went.
against my truck with Dog's massive head sticking out of the passenger side window beside me, I glanced up and down Route 16, my eyes lingering on the snow-capped peaks of the Bighorns Cloud Peak Wilderness area. He met Russians here on the highway. All four men nodded. They were once again parked in their wheelchairs next to the Veterans Home red brick sign. What, they were driving by in a staff car with big red hammers and sickles on the doors, and he flagged them down? The rail-thin one in the thick glasses and Air Force ball cap, Ray, snickered. The one in the cardigan, Kenny, gave him a look to silence him, but that did little good. He talked to the Russians a lot. More than one Russian? They was sometimes two Russians. Delmar, dressed in the rayon Marines jacket, joined in. Say, shouldn't you be taking notes on all of this? The other three nodded. It's a matter of national security, that's right. I calmly pulled out a notepad and pen and pretended to write things down. So, two Russians. They all four nodded. Did you catch their names? They all four first looked at one another, then back at me, then shook their collective heads. What'd they look like? They all looked at one another again, then the individual in the green fatigue jacket and boonie hat, Clifton, volunteered. Russians. They looked like Russians. I closed my notebook. What, long gray coats and furry hats? Ray, the one with the Air Force ball cap that had the scrambled eggs embroidery on the front, nodded. Furry hats, yeah. What did they look like? I mean, besides the furry hats? Delmar, the Marine jacket, spoke up. One was a blonde woman. Mustache. Ray interrupted. He wasn't a Russian. Clifton took exception. The hell he wasn't. He talked Russian, damn it. He talked English, too. Does that make him British, you moron? Delmar clarified. She was Russian, but he was an American. After a moment, they all nodded in unison. Ray thought it was important to add, she was cute, too. Age? Younger than us. I paused, but figured they were beyond getting their feelings hurt. That doesn't narrow the field much, guys. I stepped back and petted Dog. Not to change the subject, but did you fellas ever see Charley Lee with a shoebox? They all stared at me. Right. Pocketing the notebook and pen, I pushed off the fender of my truck. You guys have anything else you'd like to add? Clifton smoothed his brim and looked up at me. You gonna catch who killed poor old Charley Lee? Well, as far as we know, Mr. Stillwater died of natural causes. They looked at one another and then back at me. That's what they want you to think. Right. I fished my keys out of the pocket of my jeans along with my watch. Coming up on noon, don't you fellas need to get back in for lunch? You're damn right. It's walleye fillets today with tartar sauce and tater tots. Delmar agreed. The only thing better's pizza night. Kenny in the cardigan led the way, pivoting in his motorized wheelchair and sailing back for the complex of buildings in the distance. I watched as the remaining three peeled off in formation and motored their battery-powered way next to the rolling dales of the picturesque drive that ran alongside the main entryway. The hopped-up wheelchairs looking like a convoy, with each one flying a different tiny flag. Watching the little procession go, I couldn't help but wonder how I'd decorate my own wheelchair someday.
Good job, John. Oh.
Double Jessica. Thank you so much for that. That was a wonderful reading by John Bishop, joining us here this afternoon, at least afternoon here in Montana. We are absolutely delighted to be here for our live virtual event with bestselling author Craig Johnson to celebrate the newest adventure for Sheriff Walt Longmire, Next to Last Stand. We're also excited to be here with special guests Cassidy Freeman and John Bishop from the cast of the Netflix show Longmire. I'm Jessica, the event coordinator here at Country Bookshelf in Bozeman, Montana, and we are grateful to share this virtual space with our fellow sponsoring bookstores, Paulina Springs Books in Sisters, Oregon, and Madison Books in Seattle, Washington. You can visit booksincommonNW.com for more information about our virtual speaker series, and follow us on Eventbrite to register for more great Books in Common events. Before we get to Craig, I just wanted to give you orient you a little bit here for this virtual space. We are recording the event, and it will be viewable on booksincommonNW.com, as well as the Books in Common NW YouTube channel after the event concludes. There's a link to buy your copy for both of the author's books, all of the books, including signed Craig Johnson, Next to Last Stand here at Country Bookshelf, that will reappear in the chat periodically as we go through the event today. You can also leave questions at the Q&A button that some of you have already found. Thank you. And we will get to them as time allows. You can also see the questions other folks have answered and vote on the questions you think are the best. If you run into any tech issues along the way, we do recommend you first try exiting and re-entering the webinar. If you can't get back in, we hope you'll visit the Books in Common NW YouTube channel to watch live there. We recommend trying headphones to fix any sound issues. I'm sorry for the echo earlier. That was just me being on two screens at once. So I appreciate your patience as we had dueling microphones there. We do want to remind you that this is a shared creative space that we want to remain safe for everyone, and ask that you be respectful for all those that have joined us tonight. Offensive or inappropriate comments or questions will see the user dismissed from the space.
That's
Craig
it,
Johnson.
John, you're out of here. Bye. Good night seeing you, John.
Good luck, everyone.
Craig Johnson is the New York Times bestselling author of the Longmire Mysteries, the basis for the hit Netflix original series Longmire. He is the recipient of the Western Writers of America Spur Award for Fiction, the Mountain and Plains Independent Booksellers Association Reading the West Book Award for Fiction, the Nouvelle Observatoire Prix du Roman Noir, and the Prix SNCF du Polar. His novella, Spirit of Steamboat, was the first one-book Wyoming selection, and he's coming to us from Ucross, Wyoming, population 25.
You are the first bookseller that's been brave enough to try and say all of the French awards. I'm very impressed by that. That's very good. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Wow.
It's Montana for you.
Yeah. That's really upscale up there, I tell you.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Craig. And thank you, John, for giving us that reading from the beginning of Next to Last Stand. I'm curious if you guys have any questions for Craig, or if you want me to get it started.
It's all you, Jessica. My questions aren't about his books.
Now, just so you do know that that Cassidy is a local there, and she was telling me the other day that she grew up, going to the Country Bookshelf, for goodness sake. So,
yay!
So, yeah.
I still have some of your bookmarks with that C and the kid reading in the tree. That's like
not unlike our Stay Home at Read. He's reading under the tree now. He's grown up just a little.
Oh, okay, cool. No, growing up, 15 miles up a dirt road outside of Livingston, my options for bookstores were limited in the 90s. And so, and 80s. And so, as I've heard. And so we used to go to Country Bookshop all the time.
Wonderful. Well, you are, as I mentioned, we'll drop the link for purchasing Craig's books. You can purchase them from us here at Country Bookshelf in Bozeman. Also visit our friends Paulina Springs Books in Sisters, Oregon, and Madison Books in Seattle, Washington. Craig's fans span the globe at this point. And Next to Last Stand, as we start here, we get to go on a lovely little heist with Walt this time around. So I was curious, the book, even the title is reminiscent of Custer and the legacy of Custer and the Indian Wars here in the West. And I was curious when you first encountered Custer's last fight. The painting that is the centerpiece of.
How do you not? I mean, you can't escape it. I mean, that's the problem. Like, ever since, Anheuser-Busch decided to ship out like 1 million posters a year, You know, I mean, they're all over the place. Like that, and I don't mean, I mean, they've kind of gone into the secondary market, obviously, from all the people that had them at saloons and bars and all this type of stuff like that. You know, and I know Cassidy's been in numerous saloons and bars. I don't think John ever had. He's never been in any bars.
Yeah, I'm a lush. So.
But yeah, it's everywhere. Like, I mean, everywhere you go, like that painting is looking at you like that. And you know, that was kind of the access point for me. Like that, you know, it was like, well, okay, if you're going to write something about Custer and the Little Bighorn and all that, which is only about 90 miles up the road, like that's really close. So it's local history, you know, for me, like that. But then the question is, how do you do something different? You know, and the access point I thought, you know, would have to be, you know, something different like it. And I thought that painting, when I started, you know, becoming aware of it, there's a series of essays by Norman McLean, you know, marvelous Montana writer, who did A River Runs Through It, like that, Young Men in Fire, like that. And then there's a collection of essays that he did. And I think he was planning on writing a Custer book at one point in time like that, but I don't know if he either abandoned the idea or he passed away like that before he had the chance to have that particular project come to fruition. But there's the essays that he did on it were kind of interesting. And he mentions the painting like that. And the painting itself, I guess in the literary sense, you know, I got, first time I became knowledgeable of it was probably in For Whom the Bell Tolls. The lead character in For Whom the Bell Tolls, like it is Richard Jordan, like it, who's having, I can't remember it is, I think he's having lunch, you know, with his grandfather at the saloon in Red Lodge, Montana, like that. And they happen to look up and a reproduction of the painting is on the wall. And in For Whom the Bell Tolls, like at his grandfather says to his grandson, he says, well, you know, Custer was not a particularly intelligent man. And the Richard Jordan character, of course, he kind of takes umbrage with that, you know, because, you know, we were all kind of sold a kind of a little bit of a bill of goods like that about Custer, about how magnificent he was, how brave he was, how magnificent of a soldier he was and all this. And I think that probably, you know, that the character's grandfather makes the best case. He says he was not a particularly intelligent man. He was not a particularly wonderful cavalryman, to be honest with you, but he did have a talent. He had a talent for getting into trouble. And then he had a talent for getting out of it until he didn't one day like that. And I think that probably is the best, you know, description of Custer, you know, that I can come up with like that. But those were the two ways that I discovered about the painting like that and thought, you know what, this might be the access point. This might be the way to get into this. So.
Well, I mean, it's not unlike a certain favorite sheriff of ours who has a knack for getting into trouble and then getting out of it again.
So far he's gotten out of trouble as he goes along like that. But yeah, every once in a while I do kind of wolves every once in a while. But yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, the other thing is the last two books, like at Depth of Winter specifically, was particularly dark. Like and Land of Wolves, you know, was an attempt of Walt, you know, to try and, you know, find some sense of normalcy back in his life, you know, and come back, you know, to Durant and Wyoming and the U.S. like and try and like find a way to rediscover, you know, his life and himself again. So I thought he was kind of due a little bit lighter book. You know, I thought maybe I need to kind of distract him a little bit. And if I know Walt Longmire, the one thing I do know is he's just as guilty as I am as far as like, if you can present him with a problem, if you can present him with something, it will prey upon his mind like that, you know, like a mystery. And if he's, you know, trying to track down the information, you know, about this painting, you know, I thought, okay, well, that's research like that. And that's one of my weaknesses too. I think it's everybody's weakness like that. I mean, whenever you're, you know, in an altered state of mind like that and trying to get back to where you were, sometimes you need to be pulled out of yourself. And in this book, Walt gets, you know, pulled out of himself, you know, through that painting and the research that he has to do to discover that maybe it does exist. Maybe it's still around. And where did that Florsheim shoebox with $1 million come from?
Yes. There is, as was alluded in the lovely piece that John read, there's a Russian connection. And I was curious what kind of research you did into the European sort of fascination and trade in American Indian artifacts and other remnants of the American West, and the way that the West is sort of romanticized, particularly in Europe.
Oh yeah, I know the books have been translated into about 20 languages, like it, and so we do foreign tours, which is very helpful because it keeps my wife Judy with me like that, because those trips to Casper and Gillette were just not cutting the mustard like it, and so whenever I was able to haul her over to Paris, and places like that, then she took an interest in me again, so I've been able to hold on to her for now like that. But yeah, no, it's for me that's some of the strangest conversations I've had have been, overseas, look at about Western history and Western writers. I mean, I remember sitting there, with 6 French publishers. There was an awards ceremony that I went to, like that in Paris, like that, and I think these were like 3 of the biggest French publishers there are, like that, including my good friend Oliver Gaumeister, like for Gaumeister Editions, like that, and we all started talking about Western literature. We all started talking about Western writers. And they were extraordinarily knowledgeable, about the West and about, Western writers. And I mean, there were people that I could bring up like that, most Americans wouldn't know who those people were, Walter Van Tilburg Clark, people like that. And they knew all of them. They knew all of them and were well acquainted with them and translated their works and all of this. And so it's kind of fun, to discover like that there's still an interest. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's, all 3 of us, like, John, Cassidy, and I, we're all like here in the West in different portions of it like that. But I don't know, the old statement, the prophet hath no honor in his own country. Whenever you're living in a landscape, sometimes the wonder and the epic drama and the absolutely magnificent aspects of it sometimes escape you because they become mundane. They become the everyday because you see them every day. You wake up in that world, and I think it's important to make sure, that we still realize that this place that we live in is kind of amazing.
Not only do they become mundane at times, but they almost become empty feeling. You can almost reach into a place where you feel so disconnected, which is something that I've noticed during this bizarre year of kind of having to stay home and not being able to travel the way that we do, even if it's for a couple days. That ability to change our environment allows us to appreciate each one in its own uniqueness. And I think you're right. I think it is important to remember what this is. And it's hard to know that if it's all you know.
Very true.
Definitely. What other, as Walt goes through the book, he's obviously doing a lot of research and he's visiting museums and trying to figure out the story of this painting. Did you go on a similar road trip?
I did. I mean, it's a great excuse. Like, I mean, other than the other big research excuse that I have, which is laying over here on the sofa in front of the wood burning stove reading, and Judy will come over and go, "Are you going to do anything today?" And I'm like, "I'm working here. I'm working." All right. So, but that was on the road like that. I got to go on the road, and that's, you have these things like that you do. Like in Los Angeles, we were laughing about it last night. I was laughing about it with A. Martinez, because it's like, nobody goes to the Santa Monica Pier unless, you have visitors in town. I'm sure in Los Angeles, then you go to the Santa Monica Pier. Like nobody goes to the Statue of Liberty in New York unless you got family in town and, you're going to take them all out there like that. Well, the Little Bighorn is, like I said, 90 minutes up the road, but, I don't go unless, there's somebody who comes in and wants to go and see this, place where, an epic, turning point in American history was like it. And, the other thing also goes with, a lot of the museums. Like I don't take advantage of the opportunities that are afforded me. We've got a really wonderful little museum, the Jim Gatchell Museum here in Buffalo, which is the old Carnegie Library. And so it's actually Walt's office. And we used it in a number of the videos, for the visuals, for the videos that went along with the readings, and then another is the Bradford Britain, which is over in Sheridan County, which is an absolutely magnificent, museum. And then, of course, the granddaddy of them all, the Buffalo Bill Center of the West over in Cody, which is like 5 different museums, all interconnected. And it's just a spectacular museum, with the McCracken Research Library. And I'll also put in a little plug for ourselves and say that they have a display in their massive weapons section of their museum that's designated for the guns of Longmire, that are actually the weapons that were used in our TV show, And that's, just that's fun. Like, it's fun to go do those things. I mean, that's one of the, you know, the things you can get away with as an author. Like, and I'm sure it's the same thing with an actor. Like, you know, whenever you get to go do the research and find out about the characters, like, and go digging, like, you know, for what it is that you want to find out, to, you know, to get a proper representation, you know, of those characters. You know, that's part of the fun of being an artist, it seems like to me.
Was there a particular thing that you learned over the course of all of this research that just really fascinated you, but didn't quite fit with Walt's story, that maybe got cut as you went through?
No, whenever I found anything, it went in the book. Like, you know, that's, I'm really, you know, especially what I tend to refer to my research process as the creek bed method. You know, I don't do a lot of notes. I don't do a lot of charts and all that kind of stuff. I just read, watch, you know, research, do as much as I possibly can. And I did the research for this book for like the better part of 8 years. And then what happens is what I remember, what it is that struck me as being unique or different, or things that were different from what it is that I'd heard my entire life, you know, all of those type of things. That's the stuff that I think, you know, needs to go in the book. You know, it's like the shiny things in the top of the creek bed, you know, when you look through the water, what you see, and what you remember, you know, that's probably the things that need to be in there, and not just the rote information like that anybody can pick up, you know, from any nonfiction research book along the way.
Yes. Well, that does sort of lead me to my final little tidbit question. Walt has a habit of trying to overcome some of the harm he experiences by guessing the number of stitches that it was going to take. And I was just curious if you have like a running tally of how many stitches Walt has gotten over the course of the books.
I do. And I've even got a buddy of mine, Mark Brown, who's a physical therapist, like that, who's put together a medical chart for me, because there was one point in time when he said, do you have any idea how much damage Walt Longmire has had done to him over these 16 books? And I was like, I think I got a pretty good idea. He says, no, I don't think you do. So he went through like and made like this chart for me to show me like all the damage that Walt had done to him over the years. Like, and you know, a lot of it I forgot, like that. And Judy was laughing at me today because I was putting tin on the tack shed yesterday afternoon, like that. And when you work with tin, you know, and tin snips, like you're going to get bit, like it. And so this morning I referred to my hands as I was putting all the Band-Aids on. It looked like I'd been trying to stuff a bobcat into a bidet, is what it looked like. Okay? But you know, that's just, you know, stock and trade. You know, whatever, you know, work you choose to do, like that, there's going to be some damage involved. And you know, Walt fortunately seems to soldier on, like that, and we hope he'll keep soldiering on for a good long period of time, like that. So I thought I wanted to take a moment there to talk about John's reading. I thought that it was absolutely magnificent. I was really fun to give him that one because I knew that his comic timing would work so magnificently with that reading. And, you know, the voices that he was able to come up with for the waivers, who actually do exist. The waivers are actually a group of individuals, veterans, who have sat in front of Fort McKinney up at the Soldier and Sailors Home here in Wyoming. And they wheel their wheelchairs out there like that, and they would wave, you know, at all the traffic. And that had been going on for about 30 years like that. And I would wave back, but then of course, you know, I'm a whore, you know, for a story. And if I smell a story, if I think there's a story, like that, I'm going to stop like it. And so I would stop like it and talk with those guys and hear the stories that they had about their service. And that point in time, there were still guys that had been in World War II. And it was just marvelous to sit and talk with those guys like that and get the stories. The only problem was they would keep trying to get me to go out and buy beer for them and bring it back like that. And you know, the coordinator for the Veterans Home said, no, you can't do that. All of them are on medication, and alcohol is not one of the medications that they're allowed to have like that. And so, so that was, you know, a little bit of a point of interest between us like that. So
yes. Well, John, Cassidy, do you have any questions you wanted to throw into the mix before I dive into some of these from our audience?
I'll just say that, you know, my father was a World War II fighter pilot, and I was born late. My dad was 44 years old when I was born. So as a kid, we would go to the West Side drugstore and sit. My dad would have coffee with a lot of these guys who were WW2 vets. And I remember listening to those conversations, and a lot of those guys didn't like to talk about the war, you know. they just sit together and kind of be together. And but every once in a while they get into something. So when I was reading that bit, I was just thinking of so many of those real guys, people that I knew when I was an 8-10-year-old kid, you know. So, and I just love the way Craig paints pictures with his words. And
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
We missed seeing one of your daughters, though, in the background. The last time that John did one of these for us, he was having some trouble getting on. And the first thing we saw was one of his daughters darting out of the screen. Like he got
well, I'm hoping that what I'm seeing.
I was waiting. I was looking for the daughter there. One of them, at least, you know, to help you out. Have they abandoned you today or what? What's going on?
That got me going early this morning. But what I'm hoping is that thing that keeps going behind you is, in fact, a cat. Because kind of, you know, moving around back there.
We've been having a raccoon problem lately, I have to admit. Like
I didn't see stripes.
Good.
Well, our first question from the audience is actually for both Cassidy and John. Are you willing to do more Longmire episodes or movies?
Cassidy.
Yeah, I think they have. Yeah. I mean, I would lay in traffic pretty much for anyone on this show at this point. You know, the fact that I can sign on to like a really cool book tour event and see John for the first time in months and like epically miss him. You know, like we've spent time and John wasn't even there every single week. You know, we're a really close-knit family, and that's not to say that anyone who likes anyone will do the work, but there was something really special about people all the way from its inception with Craig's books. And so I'm pretty sure that if given, look, the only reason why this hasn't been like, sorry, there's a man in my house. The only reason I'm like,
yeah, you're worried about what's on my stand? What's going on back there?
Sorry. Blushing, he was sunbathing. Close the door. The only reason why we're not doing that stuff, it's not because we don't want to. It's honestly just a matter of the powers that be giving us the opportunity and putting up the funds and creating the opportunity to do it. So, long answer to short answer, yes.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. Anytime anything happens, I hope to be a part of it, and I love. It's been such a great thing to be a part of this story, you know, and these people that I've been able to work with and become friends with, and I'm very excited every time I was involved in an episode to see how it would unfold and what how the different actors would bring their personal take on these characters to the screen, you know, and working with actors and directors of this caliber and the music that went along with the show. It was just a great thing. It was just a great experience to be part of it for me. So anytime, let's do another one.
Let's do it.
I did have a email submitted question asking, what do we need to do to get Netflix or whoever to decide to continue producing the show?
You know, it's not really Netflix's fault. Like, well, I mean, in some ways it's Netflix's fault. In some ways it's not Netflix's fault. The interesting thing is the show has never really been canceled, you know, because of like, say, ratings or lack of interest or anything like that. What happened was we were kind of victims of our own success, like that, you know, with A&E and, you know, with Netflix. What happened was after 3 years at A&E, like they decided they wanted to buy the show from Warner Brothers, who were the producing studio, and Warner Brothers didn't really want to sell it, even though it was the highest rated scripted drama that A&E had ever had. And so when they said they weren't going to sell it, that's when A&E said, well, we're not going to do the show anymore. And that's when we got picked up by Netflix, and it was really great on Netflix. We were one of the top 20 shows, I think, still on Netflix, which is really kind of wonderful. And then something wonderful and horrible happened. Netflix went to Warner Brothers and said, we want to buy the show, like that. And once again, Warner Brothers said, we're not going to sell the show. We didn't sell it to A&E. We're not going to sell it to you guys. And Netflix was a little bit more generous than A&E was, and said, okay, well, we're going to do one final season, and then we're going to stop production like that. And that was, I think we're creeping up on almost 3 years ago, I think. I know it's 2.5 or so. But yeah, and so what we're waiting on is to see what it is that Warner Brothers is going to do like that. And the glimmer of hope that we've got in all of this, of course, is that Warner Brothers announced last year that they're going to do their own streaming service, just like Paramount is doing, just like CBS is doing, just like all of these other networks are doing. And so I don't know, I can't help but think that it would be kind of silly, for Warner Brothers to not think about maybe resurrecting the Sheriff and Company again. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Also, here on the ground in Santa Fe, I'm pretty sure plenty of our sets are still intact, which is another positive, although it's not a promise.
Wonderful. Bonnie says, you're my favorite writer and have inspired me to write my own mystery. How long did it take you to write the first novel?
Oh, that's a horrible story. That's a really horrible story. Look at the way it started out was I started and I wrote the first 2 chapters of The Cold Dish, and then I put it in a drawer, and as they say, life is what happens while you're making plans, and so bought some property, built a ranch. My wife Judy wanted to start a store up over in Sheridan, so I went in and tore the old opera house up. The old opera house on the main street of Sheridan, Wyoming, which is called the Katy Building, which kind of gives you an indication of where it is the name came from. And anyway, got all that stuff all up and going like that, and then came back out here to the house and opened up the drawer and thought, well, maybe I should think about rewriting this book or writing this book again. And 10 years had gone by. So I took a kind of a little 10-year hiatus there that I would advise no author to do like that. It's much better to stay in there and be writing like that. Don't. The only way that a book dies is if you put it in a drawer and close the drawer. If it lays there on the desk looking at you, or as a minimalized, document, waiting and lurking down there on the bottom, as long as it's there lurking, it's in your mind like that. It's they only die when you bury them somewhere.
Nice. Denise is curious if John's role evolved more than was originally intended. I think we first saw him with the sheep.
Usually.
It's a common thing.
You might want to close those curtains behind you, John. I don't know. Look, it's just a thought.
Nothing as interesting as what Cassidy has going on there.
I could get him back out here. He does what I tell him.
I think I was supposed to do one episode, and that was the pilot episode with the sheep. And I don't know, they kept me around, and I'm happy they did.
Wonderful.
I think Bob Barnes was a real character in your town or something, Craig. Based on a real person.
Well, he's based off of somebody with a different name, but the very first sentence in The Cold Dish is Bob Barnes on line 1. They got a dead body out on BLM land.
Yeah.
So he was right there from the get-go.
That's my favorite novel, by the
way. they did that was one thing I think our producers and directors did really, really well was. They spotted opportunities whenever, and it had a direct effect, I think, on the arc and the trajectory of the show. They weren't hard and fast. They really took opportunities when they saw them. If they thought a performer was really, really good, or that one of the teleplay storylines had a little bit of resonance to it that maybe they could utilize they were really good thinking on their feet, which is a remarkable thing because I think the majority of the time. Producers and directors tend to come in, with a hard and fast idea, and they stick to it. If for no other reason than maybe for monetary reasons, they want to stay on track and stay on script and all this. But
or
ours
ego,
were open.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I said or ego.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Ego.
There is that too.
No, the ability for someone in charge, as they say, to say, yeah, I'm in charge, but I don't know what's best. You know, I don't know if this rings true. And, you know, I think that takes a lot of confidence. And I think it served our show well.
Well, speaking of Katie and the Katie building, Cassidy, what sort of sheriff would you have been if you'd been elected?
God, I mean, I think I would have. Well, I think I would have followed in my father's footsteps in terms of trying to be as human as I possibly could be. It's something that I think about a lot these days, as I feel a lack of leadership in our country, and it's really, I think about what it means to be a leader. And I think that one of the reasons why people love these books and love the show is because they see Walt as a real leader, as somebody who puts people first. And that progress is when all boats rise, you know? And so that's what I hope that she would be. Of course, I'm sure if we ever get to see it, there will be some really fun, like dramatic side stories, which I'm eager to play. But I think she'd be a lot like her dad, but she would have a cell phone. and she would use it.
That puts her light years ahead in technology.
Right? I know. It just lets her get in contact with people.
Craig, do you know if Next to Last Stand will soon be translated in French?
Yes.
We do have a French viewer.
Yes, I'm extraordinarily fortunate like that. I have one of the most amazing French translators. Sophie Aslanida is just an amazing translator. And, just other than being a remarkably intelligent and insightful human being, she actually came over and spent a month here at the ranch. Which I think was a little bit of an eye opener for her, like going from Paris, to UCross like that. But she had a marvelous time like that, and I'm pretty sure I think the book is actually already sold like that. And so the only problem is they're on about a 4-book delay. They're about 4 books back, and so they have to take the time to translate them, develop new covers, and do all the things that they do there, Gaumeister. But yeah, they're already in motion, I think, as far as I know.
Wonderful. Greg says the Gatchel Museum and Bradford Brinton Memorial and Museum are tremendous to visit. They can't remember if you've incorporated either of those locations in Sheridan into your books. If not, might they figure in future novels?
Well, the Bradford Brinton makes it into the Next Last Stand, and no, the poor Jim Gatchel doesn't, because that's Walt's office. It's really kind of horrible, because all the places that are really kind of close to where my ranch is are never going to make it into the books because I supplanted. Poor Johnson County has, Absaroka County, right down over top of it. Poor Buffalo has Durant, over top of it. And yeah, even the poor Jim Gatchel, that's the Absaroka County Sheriff's Department's office, which was, for me important, in the development of the character, just simply because, I looked at a lot of the more modern, sheriff's offices, and they just really didn't move me, all that much. I mean, they're, no offense, Cassidy, but they're very technologically oriented and, they're just very sterile like that. And so I remembered that, Larry Kirkpatrick, who'd been the Johnson County Sheriff for a period in time, told me at one point in time, that the old Gatchel, Matt Gatchel Museum, but rather the library had actually been used by the Sheriff's Department for offices. And it's a magnificent building. I mean, that's one of the great things about if you go across the high plains, across Wyoming, across Montana, and you can still find, even out in California, there's some of the big ones that are still around. They're beautiful, beautiful buildings. And I kind of thought that since Walt was an English major, before he got shipped off to Vietnam, the fact that he loves books, it would only be fair that he should be, somewhere in a library, someplace So yeah, it'll continue to be used but just, not as the Jim Gatchel, I'm afraid.
Yes. Well, Next to Last Stand has a very sort of penultimate kind of title to it. Allie J is curious if there's an end in sight for the Longmire novels. They hope not.
Well, it's according to what you mean by end. It's according to what you mean by end. As far as like, am I, in the throes of like, shutting down the series, like, and stopping writing the books? No. I'll be honest with you. Never say never like that. But I see me writing these books until I'm typing away and croak, right over top of the keyboard like that. I love these characters. I love this place like that, and it just gives me too many opportunities. I always have other ideas like that, but then they always seem to get kind of incorporated into that Absaroka County world like that. An awful lot of the standalones that I've come up with, I'll be, laying there, asleep at night like that. And all of a sudden, Walt will like knock, on my subconscious and say that can be one of my stories too, just so you know. And then I end up, utilizing it as, as a Walt story like that. Now, on the other hand, like that, I do feel strongly like that what I really, really love is I love authors that had the forethought to jump ahead like that and actually put something together about their characters in the far-flung future. And, and of course, that would obviously include, Walt's daughter, Walt's granddaughter. And, for me, like that, the ones I'm thinking of right now are Forrester's, Horatio Hornblower, where he wrote, that short story that took place, far in the future for his character. Dumas did the 20 years after, with the Three Musketeers, like to let us know what finally happened, to the Three Musketeers. And so I think whenever you do a series, it kind of behooves you like to think, into the long future, the long game there, and try and think about, where are those characters going to end up and what's finally going to happen. And I have some really strong images and some strong ideas about, where that place is going to be, but I hope we don't get to it for another 20 or 30 years, to be honest with you.
Good. Joanne is curious if any of you have participated in a sweat.
I have numerous ones, both Northern Cheyenne and Crow. My good buddy Marcus, he drags me into just about everything, and so he's a font of all knowledge, and just one of the most charming, gracious individuals you could ever possibly want to meet, and that kind of speaks, to the Northern Cheyenne and the Crow as a whole. It would be kind of, it would be horrible of me, to not include them in my books, and so I spend a lot of time up on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation and on the Crow Reservation. The next book, actually, the reading that Cassidy did is my little foreshadowing of the next book, which is called Daughter of the Morning Star. And it's about a girls basketball team up in Lame Deer on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. And the subtext of the book is that this one player, Jaya Long, is getting these death threats. People are threatening her like that. And she has a sister, Jamie, who had disappeared a year earlier. And what this book deals with is the scourge of missing Native women that we've had here in the country that's just astounding, the amount of women that just simply disappeared. And, it's important, I think, I tend to write what I refer to as socially responsible crime fiction, in the sense that I'm not, looking to stack up bodies like cordwood. I'm looking to have something to say, to have a message, or maybe draw attention, to an issue that I think, is sorely in need of a little bit of attention like that. And this will be another one of those. And Walt has faced some really difficult situations, but being stuck on a bus with an entire busload of teenage girls might be the most difficult thing he's ever had to contend with in his life. So, and since I have a granddaughter who's 13, I know all about that. So,
Yes. Well, speaking of that reading, Troop says, Cassidy, your reading the other day of the basketball scene was true. Have you considered more voiceovers or book narration?
I'm always up for that. I really love, I was saying yesterday, or when was that? 2 days ago? Thank you. Where am I? I was saying that I have done a lot of live readings before of short stories. And I come from live performance on stage and theater and whatnot. And that was always sort of the place that I felt comfortable, strangely. But it would be really fun. Yeah. What's interesting is that people still recognize you, especially in Santa Fe, because people come here. Like, I'll be at the farmer's market and someone will be like, "Oh my God, you're here." And I'm like, "What? Who are you?" And they're like, "We came here to see the Via Caldera. We came here to go to Madrid and see these things. We came here to go to Las Vegas and see the exterior of the Sheriff." I think that's so cool that people pilgrimage here to see the locations of Longmire, even though we're supposed to be representing Wyoming. But more so than recognized, like visually, someone will say, "I heard your voice and I knew it was Katie Longmire." And I was like, that's crazy, because you don't hear yourself the same way unless your friend Craig asks you to do a little reading, and then you have to listen to yourself like 100 times and be like, I sound crazy. But I think it's an interesting point of recognition is the voice. And so that's really fun stuff to do.
Yeah, the resonance, like from hearing you guys do the readings, is really wonderful. I mean, because we get to hear you guys do dialogue, and that type of thing like that. But very rarely do we get to hear you do like a running consciousness, kind of monologue or that type of thing, especially when that goes on for pages. Most dramatic works don't allow for that like that very much. And so it's very interesting to me to hear you guys, like talking for that period of time.
Well, yeah, and the spoken word, Craig, is so different when it's what we would say versus what's written. And it's one of the reasons why people think, I mean, not to compare or be weird, but why people are like, Shakespeare is, you don't really have to say it any certain way. It's written in that way. And so when you have beautiful writing such as yours, not only does it come across differently, but it asks the speaker, the reader, if you're going to speak it out loud, to pay close attention. And I do think that there's something different. I think we have an internal voice that we read with. And I think that it's really the basis of storytelling, right? Is sitting around a fire and sharing stories. That's where storytelling started, is orally. And so I think it's really, really cool. And I think when you know that you're going to read a page and say it out loud, you hear things differently than you would were you just reading it quietly by yourself.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. One thing you said though earlier, and I wanted to ask both you guys this question, was that, since both of you have done live theater, and also have like musical backgrounds and all that, how does it compare with, whenever you're doing like film work or television work? It would seem to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, that live theater has the advantage of having that immediacy of response. You've got an audience out there, and that energy that they're transferring to you in a live performance, that to me sounds really kind of amazing. And I would, as wonderful as television and film is, it seems to me live performance would be a hard thing to get over in comparison.
Take it, John. I have a lot to say, but I always do, so I want you to speak.
It's interesting because I was doing this the other day. I write a lot of songs, and I've been writing more songs more recently during all of this. And, on certain days, I will sing a song that I've written in the way that I thought about the song as I was writing it. Like there's a message that I want to convey with a certain song. And then 2 days later, I'll be playing the song and I'll reinterpret the song and sing it completely differently. And I'm hearing my own words and my interpretation of the idea in a different way, and it still works. It makes it. Everything's up to interpretation, I guess. But it's interesting to do that as a writer. I don't know how you feel about your writing if you read something a year later and maybe it feels a little differently to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Cassidy.
I was on stage for so long before anyone put a camera on me that since I was 3, I was on stage in operas and like ballets, and it was disgusting. I probably was born on a stage, to be honest with you, if you asked my parents, at least expecting applause. And it was, you're right. You get so energized by that. Even if I'm reading a short story with a music stand, in front of a live audience, there's this feeling that like the train leaves the station. And it's this way too when you perform music, I'm sure, John, even though it's maybe more rehearsed, or I don't know, I was more terrified ever performing music than I was acting. But the train leaves the station and you can't get off. And if you know what I mean, and if you hit something or like something goes awry, you got to be in the moment with it. And it's so, but you're also dependent on everyone else. You're dependent on your stage manager running the light board, and you're dependent on the cues that are going to come in. You're dependent in some ways on the audience laughing. And like you said, Craig, like, you know, their immediate reaction, you also have to be prepared for their non-reaction if you face plant. And you're like, and I will not be waiting for that laughter. So it is an interactive experience, even though there is the fourth wall of, you know, the proscenium. And so going to film and television, well, first of all, not only do your facial expressions have to be like way smaller, because there's a camera like right up in your grill, but it has to be much more internal. That's been my experience. But there's magic in that too, because on stage where you might have to feel like you have to project your voice or project a feeling with your body, like that's cool. And then it's a totally different bag of wax or ball of wax, when you have a camera and someone says like, honestly, all you have to do is think it and they're going to see it. And that's so subtle and it's so beautiful. And yeah, there isn't, I mean, we're still doing it in front of 200 people, just so everyone's aware. It's just that they have other jobs, like moving lighting equipment and fixing your hair and like serving you food. There's still a lot of people on set, but they're not watching you in the same way. And you're not performing for them. So you almost have to forget them and stay really in tune with who you're in a scene with. And it feels smaller. It feels like more intimate in a different way, which is not, you know, I mean, acting is acting, but it is a different experience. I think there's magic in both of them.
Well, speaking of music, one of our questionnaires says, who was the band and artist that sang the closing song there at the end? I don't know if the credits ran all the way through for our viewers, but
it was Band of Horses.
Are you talking about the clip, or are you talking about the TV show, or
the clip?
Which one?
Oh, the clip. So sorry.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, to say something. That was our good friend Dave Stewart down at the Occidental Hotel. He put together an ensemble, and they did Gary Owen, which is the piece that was obviously the marching song that Custer used. And I have to admit, it was kind of funny too, like that, because David put that together like that, and he was sending me the audio clip of it, and saying, "Here it is, we did it." And there was a long pause, and he goes, "Just so you know, the song is pretty repetitive, Craig. It's not, it doesn't really go a lot of places, just so you know." So we, sat down, and Marcus Red Thunder and I were listening to it, and it's really nice. It's wonderful for about 30 seconds. And then you start thinking, okay, yeah, maybe it needs a little help here. And so Marcus knew a wonderful drumming group, and then the drumming group are the ones that came in at the end, and kind of take us home, and we thought it was nice, because it gave a kind of a balanced, kind of audible version to, the epic instance of history in itself. So.
Yes. Well,
I think the musicians and everybody are all listed on the credits at the end. You can go back to the beginning, and listen to it. So.
And we'll work on getting that clip up at booksincommonNW.com. But I think we are almost at our time. So final question for all of you, very self-serving to me here in a bookstore. What are you reading? Besides Next to Last Stand, obviously.
You guys go ahead. I have to go grab something real quick.
Yeah, I know. I have to go grab mine too. You go, John.
I would not be a good brother if I didn't mention my brother David, who is a fan of Western history, He's written a book. You can get it on Amazon, David Bishop. I'll Meet You at Three Forks. He's written 3 books now. I'm very proud of him. He's 22 years older than I am. He started writing novels about, 8 years ago, and he's written 3. So check it out.
Fantastic.
And, you have to read Hell is Empty, As the Crow Flies, An Obvious Fact, A Cold Dish. Come on.
Now, don't you also have a musical release out here recent? Don't you and your extraordinarily talented daughters have a music release out? Don't you?
We recorded a 6-song EP with Jason Mraz at Jason Mraz's studio. Jason wasn't part of the music, but we used all of his amazing equipment and did some recordings. Yeah, and we have if you're on Instagram, we're Old Soul is the name of the band, official, Old Soul Official, or you can find it on John Glenn Bishop and link it to the music if you'd like to listen to some of the music. So, yeah. And I read a lot of required things from my 2 daughters who are both in high school. So we've been into Macbeth more recently.
Don't.
Nice. No one's on stage. It's fine. We're safe.
This kind of life is a stage.
Creeps at a pity pace.
Speaking of, I have a 13-year-old stepdaughter who we're trying to keep sane during this whole quarantine and homeschooling. And so we have a family book club, and we just finished this classic because we love to read books that then we can watch the movie of. That's like the treat at the end. So, and let me tell you, the book is way better than the movie on this one, just so we're clear.
Right.
I mean, I love me some Penelope Cruz, but this is way better written. And it makes me think of the West. And then, in my world of, I'm kind of like a self-help book junkie. My friends think I just have like a lot of troubles. I don't. I just love the way that we think we like talk to each other and the way we talk to ourselves, really. And especially in this time, something that I've heard from my friends is like how it's hard to sort of battle their own mind at times. We have a lot more time with ourselves. And unless we are used to being an introvert or have a lot of hobbies that take up a lot of time, it can sometimes be hard. And so right now, if anyone's struggling, I'm reading this book called Your Resonant Self, which is really beautiful. And it's about the brain and how you can heal your brain by understanding the way that you speak to yourself. My friend Edie Patterson, who's a co-star of mine on my other show, recommended it to me, and I'm really enjoying it as like a science geek and a biology geek, and also like a love yourself geek. So if anyone needs that, that's what I'm reading too.
And what is that other show?
It's called The Righteous Gemstones, and it is a comedy on HBO. If you know Danny McBride, he kind of has a theme with his work, and this is his latest HBO comedy. And it's kind of it's about megachurch televangelism and its ridiculousness a little bit. But I'm here to tell you, we don't make fun of religion. We're just making fun of a very specific sliver that's kind of funny. So
Wonderful. What are you reading, Craig? Winter Counts. Very good.
Hi, Dave Whedon. Look at he's a marvelous writer. Look at Lakota. It's I think it's the start of a series, I believe is what it is, about a Lakota enforcer who makes his way down to Denver, where some drugs are filtering their way onto the reservation. And he's a marvelous writer and a great guy too. And now that I've mentioned his book, he owes me 2 beers. Okay, so I just want to be clear about that and get it on the record. Okay. So.
Well, I think that's the second time you've mentioned it too.
It is.
Oh,
it
so
is.
4.
I know. I'm working on a 6-pack is what I'm working on. The other one's actually, I think it was the tattered cover. And also when I was doing the Keith McCafferty talk with you the last time. We had such a wonderful time.
That's a different definition of working on a 6-pack. I really like that.
Yeah, we saw the other version in the background there. Yeah. Anyway,
you're gonna embarrass me.
He turns it away from.
I know. I'm all. Anyway, look, beautiful
Beautiful
outside.
Santa Fe. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. It's been an absolute delight. Everyone, please visit booksincommonnw.com. There's a link in the chat to purchase your copy of Next to Last Stand and More from Craig Johnson. We are going to be back on Thursday with more Western and Montana writers. Maxim Luskatoff and Joe Wilkins will be talking about Maxim's new book, Ruthie Fear. So please visit us at booksincommon.com to register for that. There's more great stuff coming up in October. Thank you so much to Craig and John and Cassidy for joining us this afternoon. And happy reading, everyone. Stay home and read.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Cassidy. Thanks,
Thank
John.
you, guys.
So much. And thank you, Jessica, too. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.